Thank you, Unity Singers. Good morning. So let's just take that attitude of gratitude and take that into meditation this morning. So if you would, close your eyes if that's comfortable. Begin to feel your body settling in during these moments of mindfulness. Peace, be still. Can you feel that? Peace, be still, and know that I am. Feel your body at rest, supported by the chair. Let your arms rest in your lap or on your thighs. Feel this presence both in you and as you and through you. Feel it in the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, said, "I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm." He was feeling that power, that sense of oneness, that sense of power that Daniel Nahmod sings about so well. So now take a deep breath in as you relax your body a little. And just be for a few moments. Again, feel that energy of one power, one presence, moving through you from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. Feel that energy flow. Frequently I feel that as a tingle, maybe even goosebumps, or you may feel it as a warming of your skin. And now take that feeling, and with that, put the breath to it. Focus your attention on the breath. There's one power, one presence in you and me and everything else. And we know from the study that we do in Unity so much that one power, that one presence is manifested as love. How can we not sit here and be just engulfed in love this morning? We cannot not be in the presence of God. We cannot not be in the presence of love. So now focus on your breath to breathe that deeply into your being. Inhale and exhale. Inhale that love. You cannot not be in the presence of God, of love. So as you turn your awareness to that sensation, that feeling, that thought, that awareness, just rest in this place of oneness. Oneness with yourself, oneness with each other, oneness with the world. And as Richard Rohr says, everything belongs. Be in that place right now. Just for a few moments, be mindful. Turn your attention to be mindful of your breath and of this presence that we call divine, that we call God, that we call love. Rest in the silence for just a few moments. I'll watch the time and rest. Take a deep breath in and then let it out fully. One more time. And begin to wiggle your fingers and toes. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. You cannot not be in the presence of God. So if you're ever down, you can always think of that if you can repeat that. I cannot not be in the presence of God or love. You know, when we use the word God, G period, O period, D period, that's the God by your definition. You know, it can be whatever we want it to be. We call it God, I call it God. So it's whatever you want it, you know, whatever you want it to be. So I think that's so wonderful. You probably realize that summer's here, right? It's a little toasty in here this morning. I didn't turn the air conditioner down a little earlier. So we'll see how it goes. So good morning to you on watching us. We're so honored that you're here with us. So thank you for being here. If there's anything that we can do for you online, let us know. You can email us, and always to the church or to my email address, which is on the website as well. And just let us know how we can support you. So it is an almost seemingly impossible spiritual practice, seemingly impossible for us to accept that others are different than us. Why do I say that? Because we keep trying to change them. We keep trying to change them to believe and act and do. And, you know, we're talking about this in different variations of this throughout Martha Krieg's book. And yes, this, along with other topics in the book, in Martha's book, are intended to be spiritual practices. And now, if it's a practice, we make progress. You know, perfection, perfect practice makes progress. It doesn't make perfection, it makes progress. So we're here to practice these spiritual principles. And this one today, or maybe it's not a problem for you guys, but for me, it's a very difficult thing to reconcile this, accepting the differences in other people. And so why do we choose to do that? Why do we need to do that? Why do we need to accept the differences? Well, the subtitle of Martha's book tells you to experience your higher self and live in wholeness. So this is one of the spiritual practices that we can do to live and practice this living in wholeness. And wholeness is in the absolute realm. We know that we're perfect and whole in the absolute realm. So accepting, and this is the caveat to this, accepting that there are differences in other people doesn't mean we have to agree with those differences. Thank God. It is the practice of freeing ourselves from being hostage to our mental hooks of non-acceptance and judgment. So if we're not accepting, are we judging? Don't answer that. From other teachers we've studied in the past year or so, we know about the practicality of living in wholeness, living in wholeness. Brene Brown told us about that, Michael Singer, in Living Untethered. Richard Rohr, I've got his book here, a little bit, I'll tell you about that in a minute. Richard Rohr talks about universal Christ and speaking as a mystic, learning to speak as a mystic. Eric Butterworth is profound in his quest for truth, for accepting differences in other people. It seems consciousness to me, there's a movement for spiritual awakening. I'm not saying that it's not like people aren't necessarily knocking down the door for that, but there is progress. At least I can see that. And the readings that we've done lately, I mentioned it a couple weeks ago, what religions and faiths should be about. There should be more focus on spiritual awakening, not dogmas or creeds or buildings even, or robes or candles or all the vestments that have been poured into the churches, in the traditional church. Not just Christian, but Judaism does the same thing. We all focus on that thing rather than, or at least that's been the focus, rather than spiritual awakening. And aren't we here for spiritual awakening? Isn't that what we're here for? At least those of us that come to Unity, I think that's true. I mean, for the fellowship and togetherness, but it's also for spiritual awakening. Charles Fillmore in Christian Healing, if you haven't ever read that book, I'll plug that. Christian, it doesn't look like this. There's some out in the lobby in the book pieces out there. Christian Healing. This is one of his first books. This, along with Lessons in Truth by Emily Cady, are the basics of what we call metaphysical teachings. Now, as you've probably heard, if you've been around, Charles Fillmore is not the easiest guy to read. So it may take a little time, and you might want to try Lessons in Truth. But it's so profound. Every time I pick it up and I had a thought, I remembered what he said about this topic, and I picked it out, and it's pretty amazing. So what he says in there is the habit of judging others, even in the most insignificant matters of daily life, must be discontinued. Jesus said, "Judge not that you not be judged." It is not safe to judge except in the absolute realm where we know where our true self, where we're there. Jesus said that he didn't judge no man by his own account, but in the Father. And again, Jesus' name for God was Father. That he judged in principle. So this is the stand we must take, and it helps us to understand that what's going on here and some of the polarization, the differences, we don't have to rest in that judgment of this world. We can be in the absolute realm. When this is done, the tendency to condemn will grow less and less until each of us see our fellow human beings as God sees them. Eric Butterworth says God doesn't choose sides on the bargaining table. You know, he taught in his practice was in New York, and he was in New York for years and years and years. He says God's on both sides of the bargaining table. The unions in New York were big, and so he was giving an example about that. He said God's on both sides. So it's interesting to me when we talk about sports games, and guys were praying for their win, and well, everybody else is praying for the other team to win. So God doesn't take sides. So in the book, Martha counsels the teachers. She talks about her counseling and teaching classes and guiding people of all backgrounds in belief. Her family, she talks a lot about her family in a couple of books, and I've heard her talk about this. They're from central Kentucky, so you can imagine very, very small place in Kentucky, and very rural, and their rural view is from that. Becky's laughing because she knows what that means. Yeah. Well, most of us come from a very or some kind of rural. I always think we're all rednecks, you know. No offense, but you know, we all have that part in us that are just, you know, if we go to Walmart and laughing at the people at Walmart, well, we're at Walmart, so what can you say? So we are all around people with different views. You know, that's a sport here. At least it is with some of the people I know. It's a sport to watch Walmart. The people at Walmart. It's constant entertainment. So many of us come into Unity because it's like we find home. It's home. A lot of you have said it's home because we're like-minded. We think alike. Well, as Rose lets you know, Martha says it's not true. She said it's a lie. Well, Martha's like that. Sometimes we think alike, sometimes we don't. So being willing to accept and acknowledge that we actually have differences, that we don't have differences, is disillusional. Yes, even in Unity. So I've shared with you over the last couple years all the discussions that's been going on within Unity about alignment with and defining how Unity is either Christian or not. And so what does that say about gathering with like-minded people? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But as we delve into this essence of accepting, acknowledging what I call the beautiful differences that cover the tapestry of humanity. It's in a world often besieged by division and unrest. It becomes imperative for us to know our own peace and wholeness, to cultivate a spirit of acceptance, understanding, and to celebrate diversity. So that's what we teach. That's what we're all about. We say it every Sunday morning. One. We're here to celebrate the unity in God and unity in one. That's unity. That's diversity. We're celebrating it. So in this vast spectrum of human existence, each individual is a unique thread weaving their own story, experiences, and perspectives into the fabric of society. Yet amidst this diversity, there continues a yearning for connection and understanding. So why do we get so attached to differences between people? Again, I think it's almost like a sport. It is also chronic judging. We like doing this. It is even a natural trait. You may not want to admit that. I see some looks that says, I don't do that. I don't judge. I don't judge. So yesterday I was, that's an extrapolation from me of what Martha says, although I've talked to her about this some, and she agrees that when we get into this judging, I think there's even some topics about it later on in the book. If we're not accepting, we have to be careful not to judge the differences. So yesterday after our game, some of you may have heard about this. No, I don't think you've heard this story. So this is a last-minute add to my script this morning. But so I was at a soccer game for my granddaughter, actually my great-granddaughter, Charlotte. And as she was coming across the field at the end of the game, I was with my granddaughter, her mom, and so we were walking to greet Charlotte just to say hi, good game, and give her a hug and a kiss. And there were a lot of family. I must have been seriously 10 or 15 family members from her dad's side of the family. They came in from everywhere to see Charlotte play soccer, which is interesting because she's 6 years old, so you can imagine. That's enough said, but it's sweet as it can be. So my granddaughter hadn't seen part of the family of T.X. And the grandmother, I was standing next to Mallory's, my granddaughter's name. I was standing next to her, and I saw the grandmother trying to make eye contact with Mallory. They haven't spoken with each other since her and her dad, Charlotte's daddy broke up. So she came over and gave her a big hug, and they were greeting each other, and Mallory was greeting the rest of the family. And so it was a little bit of shock, I'm sure, to the family. They are church. I went to his wedding a couple weeks ago, I think I told you about, and his grandfather, Tim, Charlotte's daddy. I know this isn't this complicated? See, that's how our families are like that today. Isn't that true? It's so complicated. Wait, it gets. I need the chart. It gets even worse. I'm gonna tell you, it gets even more complicated. So as we hugged and greeted and all that, and then we were walking back to the car. Mallory and I was giving her a chair for her and walking back to the car, and she started laughing, and I said, "What's so funny?" She said, "Well, can you imagine what they thought of me? She's 7 months pregnant by another boyfriend. She is not ashamed of her body. I mean, 7 months pregnant, tight shorts, barely got a bra. I mean, a top on, like a sports bra or something like that, showing a lot, and she's loaded with tattoos. She's done most of them herself. So this is my 25-year-old granddaughter. Love her. I mean, that's not a judgment at all, because I had no problem accepting that, But so she started laughing because she was getting judged previously, because she had a baby with Tim, they didn't stay together. She'd already started doing tattoos, so she was, they didn't really go for her. And because her dad, Tim's grandfather, is a Church of God minister. So it complicates the story a little bit more. I forget her, I don't even know her name. The grandmother came over to hug Mallory. She looked like, again, I'm judging, she looked like a evangelical, white woman, Church of God, woman. She just had that look, that typical, the hair and long skirt, and total opposite from Mallory. So it was interesting to see the differences. So many differences in just a family. So, are there any of you here that are former hippies? Don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. So my father-in-law once told me, regret for how much grief he gave his son Philip, Karen's my wife's brother, about his long hair. That was the thing back in the 60s and 70s, that, parents of that generation criticizing, not accepting the difference. We didn't know how, I don't think. They didn't know how. Didn't know how to do that. Don't you think? That's part of what it was. They were supposed to be on their case, that generation's case, about their long hair. Well, he was telling me this before he passed, my father-in-law, before he passed, because Philip died in the late 80s, late 70s, of drug overdose. So he had a rough time. That was the kind of the trend of that generation. Huge generational divide. Huge. Elvis was from the devil, as was all rock and roll music. Was this because we, society, were delusional and not accepting the difference between old and new generation? Can we do anything about that, or is that just the way we're wired? So how are we doing that today? How are you doing it today? So as I was walking back to the car with my granddaughter, I told her, she didn't know this story. Some of you may have read this in the MailChimp. This is another granddaughter story on the other side. My granddaughter texted me with a question this week she received from her great-grandson, Bowen. He's 7. And he's on the travel team playing baseball. He's playing baseball all the time. So he asked his mom, so God is Jesus' dad, and Mary is Jesus' mom. So is Joseph his stepdad? Now, I'm not sure exactly how his mom answered it. When I told Mallory about it yesterday, she said, Ash probably had to look that up. They don't go to church. Bowen hardly ever goes to church, but he's heard that. It's in the DNA. Those stories and myths are in our DNA. I don't think he's ever been to church to hear a Bible story. And even Mallory then, 25 years old, she said, who's Joseph? She didn't know who Joseph was. So my granddaughter, the right response obviously is yes. What he wanted to, you just say yes to a 7-year-old when they ask a question. You can get more into it later. But Bowen's innocent inquiry led my mind down a different path. It made me ponder the significant literal interpretations of religious texts that make a lot of differences in the way people see the world. And the power of storytelling in shaping our beliefs. We're as much shaped by storytelling, myths, not necessarily facts, truths, myths, but not facts, as we are facts. We're shaped by those. Joseph Campbell, read the book. Joseph Campbell talks about the power of myth. So Bowen, already from 7 years old, was already familiar with the narrative of Jesus' family. And it reminded me of an enduring influence of myths and how they convey timeless messages of love and generosity. So when I responded to my granddaughter, if you saw what I said, it says, I couldn't think exactly of what to say, and it came to me pretty quickly. It's not about telling the metaphysical meaning of Jesus and Mary like we do at Christmas. We go through all the metaphysical. So I said, this is the time when questions are answered, and the answer is questioned. And the answer is questioned. That's what we do here. That's part of the reason what drew me to Unity. My response to that in a text back to her was more for my granddaughter, not Bowen. So it made me consider the importance of fostering community where questioning and explorations is encouraged, regardless of age. And so I believe this is one of the fundamental aspects of Unity and New Thought philosophies, a pathway to spiritual growth and maturity. Ask your question, you'll get an answer, and then your answer will be questioned. Isn't that the way we grow? As I contemplate Bowen's question, I'm reminded of the endless possibilities for learning and understanding that lie ahead for him and for all of us. So what are your questions, and are you ready for the your continued journey in spiritual evolution? So those are just recent experiences that show me just up in your face about differences between people. I read a book, and if you're like me, you're going all over the place. What differences that maybe there's some differences in people you can accept, maybe there's some you can't. So I recently read a book, How a Reasonable American Could Support Trump by Brian Reeves. And I apologize to you right now if that triggers any negative judgment, thoughts, or feelings. It's just a book that I read to help me understand differences between people today. Help me to communicate more broadly with my family members, including my son, not to change them, but to be sure I kind of have a perspective of where we can talk. I've reminded of the habit number 5 from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. The habit of listening to people, of listening to other people's ideas and feelings, will help us walk this spiritual path of accepting differences in people without it throwing us, each one of us, throwing us under the bus. Because it will, with anxiety and stress and it affects our body when we get all stressed out about that. So I read a lot of books about different subjects to help me define where I am, but it's as much to help me relate to others. I've been reading books. I've read all kinds of books from atheist writers to get their understanding of God or not God, understanding of the universe. I'm reading a book now called The Power of Myth. The Myth of Normal, by psychoanalyst Gabor Mate. Fabulous book on the research that's being done about trauma in our lives. And a lot of this judgment and not accepting what is, the differences, makes us sick, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So when I talked to my son, I told him we were going to talk about worldviews so we can have something to talk about without it getting too polarized. We have totally different perspectives. I think it is important to stay engaged with other people. We don't have to think alike. We don't have to be exactly alike. So Richard Rohr says in Universal Christ, the book Universal Christ, if you haven't read that, that's a book, lesson all to itself. He talks about worldviews. He says there's 4 different worldviews. Material worldview, where we believe that the outer visible universe is the ultimate real world. It's what gives us doctors and lawyers and most of the creation of most of the civilization that we live in. Spiritual worldview characterizes many forms of religion and some idealistic philosophies. Priestly worldview, generally sophisticated people, experienced people, and traditions that feel their job is to help us put matter and spirit together. That's an interesting talk for a long time about that. Incarnational worldview. This is where Richard Rohr's forte. Matter and spirit are understood to never have been separated. Matter and spirit and manifest for each other. So those are the kind of the framework, a very broad framework that my son and I talk about sometimes. I'll bring it up and he'll give me his opinion, and I'll listen. I'll go back to Habit 5 from Stephen Covey and just listen. So it's natural for us to gravitate towards like-minded individuals, whatever that means, finding solace and camaraderie in shared beliefs and ideologically. However, the closest circles of kinship and friendship and families, differences invariably emerge. These differences are far from being a cause for discord, should be celebrated as manifestations of the rich complexity of human nature. Martha talks about a couple real personal, material things in the book about her love for crab legs. And nobody in her family likes crab legs, so she can't go into the house. If she goes into the house to eat crab legs, everybody raises Cain, so she just chooses not to eat crab legs in their plate. She'll go somewhere else. So that's the thing. That seems very minor, but it's the thing that can help you see that kind of what we're talking about with differences. So differences, far from causing discord, should be to celebrate as manifestations of the richly complex aspect of human nature. Right. Easier said than done. That's easy for you to say. But none of these practices are easy. Simple, yes, but not easy. All of the practice in Martha's books are not about changing other people. It's about our own deepening and uplifting our own consciousness. Maybe this is not one you need to work on, but there's others in this book that you can work with in your devotion. To accept differences in others is to embark on a journey of self-growth and enlightenment. It requires us to transcend the limitations of our own perspectives and embrace the vast spectrum of human experiences. Through this acceptance, not only foster empathy and compassion, but also enrich our own lives by embracing the richness of diversity, which is exactly what we talk about. And this was a struggle for me. I mean, because there's some differences I don't want to accept. I don't want to accept it. But I know for me, if I don't, it can turn dark. So, and the reason is marked by escalating polarization, global unrest. The task of accepting differences may seem daunting. And I don't pretend to tell you that I have the answers. Yet it is precisely in these turbulent times that we need acceptance and understanding, for it becomes more crucial. Again, not to agree with all the differences, but to let go of the worry and anxiety that it creates in us. So let us not be held by the notion that we must all think alike to exist harmoniously. Instead, let us celebrate the myriad of humans and thoughts of belief and identity that make us what we are, make this beautifully unique. For it is in the acceptance of differences that we are truly awakened to the full potential of humanity. Again, there's some differences that's harder for me to accept than more. In closing, Richard Rohr says the essential gospel of God's loving union with all creation from the beginning was seldom believed and usually actively denied or ignored by most clergy. It seems that was their job, is to ignore this incarnational worldview. Everything is of God and everything belongs. And he says if this understanding of this thesis in his book is true, Christ is a word for the big storyline of history, then the incarnational worldview held materially is precisely the good news for all of us. Everything is incarnated with the presence, the power, the energy, the love of God. So you don't need to name this universal manifestation Christ. So if that doesn't work for you, however, to live fully inside of it can bring great, immense fruits. So may you and all of us be inspired to cultivate a spirit of acceptance and understanding. And may this acceptance serve as a beacon of hope and healing in our troubled world. We always say, be the peace, be the love that you wish to see in the world. Be the acceptance that you wish to see in the world. Trusting our uniqueness challenges us to leave ourselves vulnerable. We each are different people, expressing our own unique way to make the world a better place. Isn't that what matters? That comes from the Rose and I were talking text this week about the service. She sent me that note. I hadn't looked at it. That comes from the Science of Mind article for today, and it sounds almost what the little blurb that I had sent her sounded almost exactly the same. Trusting our uniqueness challenges us to leave ourselves vulnerable. We each are different people expressing our own way to make the world a better place. Isn't that what matters? Namaste.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Unity.